Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Leland Manuscript from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Leland Manuscript. There is no one of the old records of Freemasonry, except perhaps the Charter of Cologne, that has given rise to more controversy among the critics than the one generally known as the Leland Manuscript. It derives this name from the statement made in its title, which is, "Certain questions with answers to the same concerning the mystery of Masonry, written by the hand of King Henry VI of the name, and faithfully copied by me, Johan Leylande Antiquanus, by the command of His Highness." It first appeared in the Gentleman's Magazine for 1753, page 417, where it purports to be a reprint of a pamphlet published 5 years before at Frankfurt. The title of the paper in the Gentleman's Magazine is "Copy of a small pamphlet, consisting of 12 pages in 8 pages in octavo, printed in Germany in 1748, entitled Ein Brief von dem berühmten Herren Johann Locke, betreffend die Freimaurerei, so auf einem Schreibtisch eines verstorbenen Bruders ist gefunden worden." That is, a letter of the famous Mr. John Locke relating to Freemasonry as found in the writing desk of a deceased brother. Hearn copied it in his Life of Leland, page 67, prefacing it with the remark that it also appears that an ancient manuscript of Leland's has long remained in the Bodleian Library, unnoticed in any account of our author yet published. Hearn speaks of it thus: "The original is said to be in the handwriting of King Henry VI, and copied by Leland by order of His Highness, King Henry VIII. If the authenticity of this ancient monument of literature remains unquestioned, it demands particular notice in the present publication, on account of the singularity of the subject, and no less from a due regard to the royal writer and our author, his transcriber, indefatigable in every part of literature. It will also be admitted, acknowledgment is due to the learned Mr. Locke, who, amidst the closest studies and the most strict attention to human understanding, could unbend his mind in search of this ancient treatise which he first brought from obscurity in the year 1696. The manuscript purports to be a series of questions proposed by Henry VI and answers given by the Masons. It is accompanied by an introductory letter and a commentary by Mr. Locke, together with a glossary of the archaic words. The best account of the manuscript is contained in the letter of Locke to a nobleman, said to be the Earl of Pembroke, dated May 6, 1696, in which, after stating that he had procured a copy of it from the Bodleian Library, he adds, "The manuscript of which this is a copy appears to be about 160 years old. Yet, as your lordship will observe by the title, it is itself a copy of one yet more ancient by about 100 years, for the original is said to have been in the handwriting of King Henry VI. Where that prince had it is an uncertainty, but it seems to me to be an examination, taken perhaps before the king, of someone of the Brotherhood of Masons, among whom he entered himself, as 'tis said, when he came out of his minority, and thenceforth put a stop to a persecution that had been raised against them. After its appearance in the Gentleman's Magazine, which first introduced the knowledge of it to the world, and in Huddesford's L. of Leland, who evidently copied it from the magazine, it next appeared in 1764 in the Pocket Companion, and in 1769 in Calcutt's Candid Disquisition. In 1775, Hutchinson introduced it into his Spirit of Masonry. Dermot published it in his Ahim and Raison, and Preston in his Illustrations. Northook, in 1784, embodied it in his edition of the Constitutions, and it has since been repeatedly published in England and America, so that the craft have had every opportunity of becoming familiar with its contents. Translations of it have also been given in French by Thory in his Acta Latomorum, in German by Lenning in his Encyclopädie, by Krauss in his Kunsturkunden, and also by Fessler and several other French and German writers. This document, so important, if true as a record of the condition of Freemasonry in the beginning of the 15th century, has been from an early period attacked and defended with equal vehemence by those who have denied and those who have maintained its authenticity. As early as 1787, the Baron de Chefdebien, in a discourse entitled Recherches maconiques à l'usage des frères de régime primif de Narbonne, read before the Congress of the Philhelethans, attacked the authenticity of the document. Thorey also, although acknowledging that he wished that the manuscript was true, presented his objections to its authenticity in a memoir read in 1806 before the Tribunal of the Philosophic Right. His objections are 8 in number and are to this effect. 1. That it was not published in any of the early editions of the works of Locke. 2. That it was printed for the first time at Frankfurt in 1748. 3. That it was not known in England until 1753. 4. That Anderson makes no mention of it. 5. That it is not in any of the editions of Leland's works printed before 1772. 6. That Dr. Plott contends that Henry VI was never made a Mason. 7. That the manuscript says that Masonry was brought from the East by the Venetians. 8. That the troubles in the reign of Henry VI and his incapacity render it improbable that he would have occupied his mind with the subject of Freemasonry. The 6th and 8th of these objections merely beg the question, and the 7th is puerile, founded on ignorance of the meaning of the word Venetian. But the other objections have much weight. Sloane, in his New Curiosities of Literature, 1849, Volume 2, page 80, attacks the document with the bitterness which he usually displays wherever Freemasonry is concerned. Halliwell, in his Early History of Freemasonry in England, page 40, has advanced the following arguments against its authenticity. It is singular that the circumstances attending its publication should have led no one to suspect its authenticity. I was at the pains of making a long search in the Bodleian Library last summer in the hopes of finding the original, but without success. In fact, there can be but little doubt that this celebrated and well-known document is a forgery. In the first place, why should such a document have been printed abroad? Was it likely that it should have found its way to Frankfurt nearly half a century afterwards and been published without any explanation of the source whence it was obtained? Again, the orthography is most grotesque and too gross ever to have been penned either by Henry VI or Leland or both combined. For instance, we have Peter Gower, a Grecian, explained in a note by the fabricator, for who else could have solved it? To be Pythagoras. As a whole, it is but a clumsy attempt at deception, and is quite a parallel to the recently discovered one of the first, English Mercury. Among the German opponents of the manuscript are Lessing, Keller and Findle, and more recently the iconoclasts of England, who have been attacking so many of the ancient records of the craft, have not left this one unspared. On the other hand, it has ranked among its advocates some of the most learned Masons of England, Germany and France, of whom may be named Krauss, Fessler, Lenning, Regalini, Preston, Hutchinson, Calcutt, these three perhaps without critical examination, and Oliver. Of these, the language of the last may be cited as a specimen of the arguments adduced in its favor. This famous manuscript, says Dr. Oliver, possesses the reputation of having converted the learned Locke, who was initiated after carefully perusing and analyzing it. Before any faith can be placed on this invaluable document, it will be necessary to say a word respecting its authenticity. I admit that there is some degree of mystery about it, and doubts have been entertained whether it be not a forgery. We have the strongest presumptive proofs that it was in existence about the middle of the last century because the utmost publicity was given to it, and as at that time Freemasonry was beginning to excite a considerable share of public attention. The deception, had it been such, would have been publicly exposed by its opponents, who appear to have used the lash of ridicule very freely, as witness Hogarth's picture of Night, where the principal figures represent some brethren, decorated with aprons and jewels, returning from the lodge in a state of intoxication, the broad sheet of the Scald Miserables, and other prints and publications in which Freemasonry is burlesqued. But no attempt was ever made to invalidate its claim to be a genuine document. After enumerating the several books in which it had been published, he resumes his argument as follows. Being thus universally diffused, had it been a suspected document, its exposure would certainly have been attempted, particularly about the close of the last century, when the progress of Masonry was sensibly checked by the publication of works, which charged it with being the depository of principles fatal equally to the peace and religion of civil society. And if a forgery, it would have been unable to have endured the test of a critical examination, but no such attempt was made. And the presumption, therefore, is that the document is authentic. I should be inclined to pronounce, from internal evidence only, that the letter and annotations were written by Locke, but there are corroborating facts which appear conclusive, for this great philosopher was actually residing at Oates, the country seat of Sir Francis Masham at the time when the paper is dated, and shortly afterwards he went up to town, where he was initiated into masonry. These facts are fully proved by Locke's letters to Mr. Molyneux, dated March 30th and July 2nd, 1696. For these reasons, I entertain no doubt of the genuineness and authenticity of this valuable manuscript. If my own opinion is worth giving on this subject, I should say with much reluctance and against my own wishes that there is neither internal nor external evidence of the authenticity of this document to make it a sufficient foundation for historical evidence. R.F. Gould styles the document an impudent forgery, E.L.H. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.